welcome to this webinar today from the Rajiv Gandhi Institute of Contemporary Studies. We are discussing a very important issue. While livelihoods has taken the center stage during the COVID crisis, the enabler of livelihoods, which we all know is education, is also suffering, and in a variety of ways. One is, of course, because schools are shut, but the other is that incomes of parents have gone down, particularly lower income groups who most need education. And therefore, even if schools reopen, there's a certain degree of anxiety about how many of the children will come back, at least to the private schools, including the affordable ones. So we put together a panel today with a certain degree of diversity by design. We have Dr. Alok Shukla, who till very recently was the principal secretary of education in Chhattisgarh. He's a member of the Indian Administrative Service. So he's managed a large school system as part of his career. We have Professor Pankaj Jain, a management scholar and a management professor, who was very concerned about the issue of both cost effectiveness and outcomes in education. And he started Gyanshala as a project to learn, but then it became so effective and significant that it's actually quite one of the major NGO initiatives in the field of affordable education. We have Chitra Ravi joining us from Chennai. By the way, Dr. Alok Shukla is in Raipur right now. Professor Pankaj Jain is in Ahmedabad. Chitra Ravi is in Chennai, and she is the founder and the CEO of Chrysalis Education Group. Chitra went to study at the Harvard University's School of Education and was very sort of inspired to use her advanced knowledge of education for upgrading and reforming the school systems in India. And she then established the Chrysalis Group, which, though it is structured as a company, is basically a social enterprise and provides a number of services to schools and also has a very significant digital presence. And we have Mr. Sandeep Dutt, who is joining us from Dehradun, and he is a Doon School product and also used to run the Duke of Edinburgh's youth program in India for over a decade. So in that avatar, he was mainly working with all the elite schools of India. He's very well known among all the public school headmasters. But then he decided to take a different turn, and for the last 10 years or so, he's been working with lower income schools, including managing the Fab India school in rural Rajasthan in Pali district. And he then established a Learning Forward Foundation, which works on the whole issue of school improvement. So by design, we have people who are in the government system, people who are working with affordable private schools, people who are running a social enterprise in this field, and people who are using digital and new techniques for school improvement, including, of course, Sandeep's belief that empowerment of principals and teachers is the key to improving schools. So I hope we will have a very rich discussion today. And I introduced the participants in the sequence in which we requested them to speak. So let me invite Dr. Alok Shukla. By the way, Alok is a medical doctor. So he also is, deeply involved with the other issues of COVID. I want to particularly thank him for, taking his time off and joining us in this. Alok, I invite you to give your first round of conversation, which is about 10 minutes. Then in a second round, I'll give 5 minutes to each participant.
So as I was saying, the whole COVID issue and the COVID thing came as a very rude shock to us. I was actually traveling from one of the rural schools to Raipur when this news came that the schools have to be immediately closed down, and exams were partially held. Some of the exams, one or two of the important subjects were not held. Uh, Exams of several boards were not held, and many of the college exams are still to be held. Uh, the schools have been closed, and therefore, uh, everyone thought that maybe it will go on for a few days. The first lockdown was for 14 days, then it extended for another 14, and so on. As of now, the directions from the Ministry of Home Affairs say that they will take a call on whether school should be opened and when they should be opened only in the month of July. We also know that UGC has said that colleges will open for freshers only in the month of September, and even for the old students, colleges will open only in the month of August. Though, of course, again, nobody is sure whether the colleges and the schools, etc., will open even at that time or not. Yesterday, I saw a very interesting survey done by some NGO where they have taken a telephone survey of parents all over the country, and the general consensus of the parents seems that we should not open the schools unless, in many cases, they say that the COVID patient should become zero, which I think is very far-fetched, at least in the near future. But in most cases, they are saying that at least in the vicinity, COVID patient should be zero, which also seems to be a little difficult, even for a state like Chhattisgarh, where we have done relatively well and the number of cases and the active cases is relatively low. So what to do is a major area of concern for all of us. The immediate response of the government of Chhattisgarh, and I think for of most of the other states and most of the other people, was that we should use technology and go to online classes. So like many other states, we also developed an online platform. It's available at cgschool.in, and we have named it in Chhattisgarhi language as Padhai Tumhar Dwar, which loosely translates into school at your doorstep or education at your doorstep. So we started doing that. We were relatively successful. At the cost of sounding a little immodest, I would like to say that we were more successful than many of our other friends. On this portal, we have been able to register approximately 20 lakh students and approximately 2 lakh teachers. In Chhattisgarh, we have approximately 57,000 schools, out of which around 44,000 are government schools, public sector schools, and the remaining are private sector schools. The number of school students is also in the range of around 50 lakhs. So we have been able to register approximately 20 lakh students, which I think is quite an achievement in such short period of time. The number of teachers in the whole state of Chhattisgarh in the public sector is approximately 2 lakh, and we have been able to register almost all of them. The second thing was that with the success of this thing in the school program, the higher education department of the government of Chhattisgarh also wanted to join in. So we provided a space for them on the portal, and I'm very happy to report that approximately 2 lakh students and approximately 5,000 teachers of the higher education department have also registered, and they are also taking part in these online lessons. Now, when I say online, I would like to caution you here that online does not only mean something that we are doing now. It doesn't mean video conferencing. Though, of course, video conferencing and interactive sessions are a very important part of the online schooling system, yet the other things are equally important. When I say other things, it is actually several things. So one is that we have recorded video lessons which are available on the website, and they have been classified according to various classes, various subjects, chapters in the textbook, etc. And these are available on the website, so children can actually view them online or download these video lessons on their own devices and see them as many times as they want, repeat them, or watch them at their own time and at their own pace. That is one part of it. The second part is that we have also put all the textbooks of all classes, all subjects in PDF forms, and we have tried to ensure that the PDF is not very large in size so that downloading the PDF is not difficult. And the textbooks therefore have been made available for all the children to be able to download and read and learn from it. The third thing is that the students are required to do some home assignments. Now, I, for one, particularly for elementary school level, have been generally opposed to the idea of giving home assignments to children, because I feel that children do need free time and children do need play time, etc. However, in the present circumstances, everybody feels, and I have been talking to people in Government of India, in NCERT, in CBSE, they feel that parents will have to at least partially shoulder the responsibility of educating their children, and therefore home assignments in the present situation, it seems, are required, are necessary. So what we do is that we have put different home assignment questions on the website which children can see, and then children can actually do these home assignments in their own notebooks at their own homes, and then they can take pictures of these pages from their notebooks and upload it on the website. When they upload it, it goes to the teachers of their own schools. I'll in a moment explain to you how it goes to their own schools. So it goes to the teachers, and the teachers then don't need to print it. We have created a small system on the website itself, so that the picture is available to the teacher on the mobile screen of the teacher, and the teacher can annotate it. So they can put a tick mark, or they can put a wrong mark, or they can put a circle and put a remark, write a remark, mark it, give feedback, etc. Everything can be done. It goes back to the student can see it, read it, get the feedback, try and improve. So that's a very important part, home assignments, which is a part of the online classes. Then the students are also encouraged to ask questions online, and they are individually responded to by the teachers, and they get SMS notifications that the response to your question has come, and you can actually go to the website, read it and understand it. And of course, lastly, actual interactive online classes, which we have made a timetable, and we are trying to do these online classes so that teachers and students can join in and interact with each other. These are interactive sessions like the one that we are having now. The important thing here is that we are trying to make education as much student friendly as possible. And we did our own survey, and we found that at least in the urban areas, we found that almost 74% of the households are in a position to share the devices, mobile devices, which are available with them in the home with the children. And we have also found that except for 15 to 16% of households, data is not a very big issue, because data these days is very, very inexpensive. I, for one, for example, I pay 100 rupees for my mobile phone, and I get unlimited data for the whole month in just 100 rupees. So data is not a major issue. However, one does know that in rural areas, in remote areas, internet is a problem. People have feature phones, they don't have smartphones, etc., etc. So for them, we have not yet started. We are very seriously working towards other modalities. One being audio recordings. So audio is something which can actually be run even on feature phones. You don't need smartphones for that. So we have actually from today started doing audio recording of content of various classes, and put it on the website. Also make a call center where people can actually make a phone call and request a particular audio recording to be played to them. One NGO here in Chhattisgarh does a very interesting thing, a radio program called Bultu Radio. Bultu is actually Bluetooth, which in their local language they just say Bultu. I think some of you would have heard of Shubhranshu, He is very famous these days because of the WhatsApp scandal which happened, and it seems that his WhatsApp was also hacked. He's the one behind this idea. So what they do is that they do this recording of audios in about 7-8 minutes format, and somebody goes to the tribal Haat Bazaar carrying it on his mobile phone, and large number of people come to the tribal Haat Bazaars with their own mobile phones, and there is no network required because they transfer it over Bluetooth. So no internet connectivity is required. The audio file gets transferred from one mobile phone to another mobile phone to another mobile phone, and they can actually make it viral in rural environments and tribal environments, and we can actually use these audio recordings. So that is one thing that we are trying to do. The second thing that we are trying to do is also to use radio and television channels. As you know, many other people are also doing that. We are also thinking in terms of making an Android app and giving it to people in those areas where people may have smartphones, but they may not have very good internet connectivity. The idea being that whenever they come to a place where internet is available, they should be able to download content on their smartphone and then view it and see it offline when they reach an area where no internet is available. So all of these things we are doing towards online education, but we must understand that online education cannot reach everybody. We are fully aware of it. So we are also thinking in terms of doing certain other things. Of course, depending on when schools will open. As of now, we don't know. So if schools actually open quickly, that would be the best solution, as far as I understand it. Then we will probably not be required to do many of these things. But if they do not open for several months, then we will be definitely required to think in terms of other things. One being a relook at the curriculum. Now, NCERT has done a curriculum for 4 weeks, which is a parent-based curriculum, activity-based curriculum. They tried to reduce the curriculum. We are also working in our SCRT to reduce the curriculum, but what we are trying to do is that the content can be reduced, but outcome should not be reduced. So as far as possible, simple things like the child is able to read, the child is able to write, the child is able to count, the child is able to do simple mathematical operations like multiplication, addition, subtraction. Though of course, it is really not required that you read every chapter in the textbook. So you can reduce the content and yet you can try to achieve the outcome levels which we want children to achieve. How much of it we will actually be able to achieve, we don't really know. The second thing that we are trying to do is still at a conceptual level, but we hope to start it in another 15-20 days. I know I'm probably overshooting my time, but I'll just finish this one sentence and then hand it over to you. We are thinking in terms of doing bicycle or motorcycle schools. So teachers will carry, we have distributed tablets to all primary schools. So these tablets, the mobile devices, are available to teachers. So these teachers will carry these devices to various villages where children can actually sit in small groups maintaining all physical distancing norms, and the teacher carrying this smartphone device with him should be able to then use all the content which has been developed in an offline mode also, because the content will be available on the tablet. We are still fiddling with the idea whether we are able to give them a small LCD projector. I'm told that these days these are not very expensive, some 2,000-3,000 rupees you can actually buy a LCD projector. So if we can mount an LCD projector on a mobile phone and project it on a wall, that might actually become very good. And we can ask teachers and children to do many of these activities which normally are done in schools. So still a lot of it at conceptual level, but let us see how it goes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alok, for giving us an overview of what the large system is doing. And just to remind the participants, the panelists are already aware, but India has about 26 crore children in schools, in about 15 lakh schools. We have over 1 crore of teachers. And so we are talking of a truly large system. And Chhattisgarh is about as forested and as dispersed a state you can get. And even in Chhattisgarh, we heard from Alok the kind of breakthroughs that were made partly due to COVID. But of course, I know that Dr. Shukla had been working on many of these ideas for several years. It's just that the timing came suddenly and he had to accelerate a lot of it. But it is really quite amazing how a range of solutions has been thought of and has been put on the ground. It's very, very gratifying. But let me just move to Professor Pankaj Jain. And Pankaj, we both agree that the devil lies in the details. So while indeed the system is very large, 26 crore children, 15 lakh schools, about a third of them private schools, but the fact is every child is special, every teacher is different, every classroom has its own configuration, every school has its own atmosphere. So tell us what Gyanshala, tell us what the Gyanshala idea was, and then what you've done in the time of COVID, and what do you expect it to move forward to? Thank you.
Well, my sort of exposure to the school education came from a chance encounter to review one of the large education program to improve the quality of education in one of the states. This was a very well-funded program with a lot of international expertise support backing it up. Also, a relatively better implemented program among the government programs at large scale. But unfortunately, as it has happened, particularly in the education sector in general, the lot of input which have gone into the school education had not resulted the required outcome. So our concern really became what do we need to do to make sure that the effort that both children, parents, and society, government puts in does lead to the desired outcome. So that really was the question that sort of excites us, and that's what has remained with me for very, very long. So the issue that we are trying to find an answer is that how do we get good quality education given the resource and systemic constraints under which we operate to the best that we can do for our children. I don't have to probably repeat this fact that India is unfortunately almost at the bottom end when it measured in terms of the learning outcome of the children, which is very unfortunate. We are actually falling behind certainly our neighbor like Bangladesh, and of course far behind Sri Lanka, and may not be much ahead of even Pakistan, which really is in a very, very difficult situation. So the concern was, why do we ensure good quality on a large scale? So when we started looking at what is happening world over, and particularly in India, we noticed, I and some of the colleagues, that the standard solution which is recommended and practiced by most people in the government or outside probably will not work easily in India. It works all over the world, but it is unlikely to work in Indian situation. So what is the solution? Solution typically remains that if we can get teacher excellence, good teachers, and they are available, then eventually you would have a good educational outcome. Now, when we looked at the process of getting good teachers and what all it takes to make a good teacher happen, work in the class, we found that the requirements are unlikely to be met on a large scale for a system which has to service something like 20 crore children, as you mentioned. Because what it really means that for 20 crore children will require maybe 50 lakhs to a crore teachers. And how does one get such teachers? And there are three systemic constraints which we have to deal with. Number one, our university and colleges are not really doing a great job in producing the people when they join any workspace, including school education. So their preparation to become a effective teacher or effective performer is rather weak. Second, most of the schools, government schools, and certainly the low-cost private schools to which most of our poor children go, are not organized whereby a person can become better at his or her task over time. Instead, actually, the conditions of the schools are such that one tends to become somewhat demoralized and may become inferior. And third is, of course, we know that there are major systemic problem of a large system, uh, which does not allow our system to be effective. So what is the way out? If the a favored solution which works everywhere in the world is not going to work in India, what do we do? So we came up with the idea: can we turn the system around and see, is it possible for child to learn even with a very modest quality teacher support? Because if we can do that, then hopefully God has given each child the similar kind of capability to learn, whether child is taught by a very good teacher or by a modest quality teacher. And if somehow we can leverage the child's capacity to learn better, even with a modest quality teacher, then hopefully we would have a solution which will work. We also decided that we should work with the first generation learner, where the parents are not able to compensate for the school's weaknesses, as it happened with most of the middle and upper class parents, who find out some way, either tuition or their own time, to make sure that the child does learn the required level of outcomes. So what we did, we started working with essentially first generation learner, uh, working with the teachers who represent a very average to modest quality human resource, which is available in large numbers in India at a modest cost, and then try to see what all these children can do. Fortunately for us, our children and these teachers, so-called modest teachers, have really done us proud, because over a period of time, these, this group has been performing at the level of average of India's best schools, which is quite extraordinary and gives us great hope that actually solutions exist even within the systemic constraint under which we have to work, which is of that we may not have large number of excellent teachers, and we would have large number of children whose parents will not be able to help them very much. But still, very impressive results are possible. So this is what Gyanshala basically is. We also wanted to make sure that our approach we develop, it works at some scale. So we typically work in the clusters of 10 to 15,000 children. We also wanted to make sure that it works in different kind of a sort of geographical linguistic setting. So we have tried to work in 3-4 states and try out whether similar kind of approach works equally well. And again, luckily the children and the modest quality teachers that we have still have shown that all over the country, they are still able to match the performance in India's best schools. And we get this thing tested by some of the lead testing agencies in India. So it is not a statement ours, but probably some independent persons. Now, what essentially we do in this? We have essentially followed 3 approaches. Number one, we give a fairly detailed, structured curriculum based upon the best known theories of learning in the core subjects of language, maths, and science. Incidentally, it may come as a surprise that at least in the area of language, the popular approach to learning of language is in fact contrary to what a linguist will tell how the language is learned. So it's important that the curriculum is drawn by relying on the best available knowledge of how the children learn any subject, whether it's language or maths or science, whatever that is. So we have tried to rely very good on and well-structured detailed curriculum. Second, we have tried to simplify the role of teacher to match the available skill level which she or he has. And there's a crux of the matter. It obviously leaves certain other skills which a teacher ought to have, an excellent teacher, or a child requires to have from the teacher. So what we have done, we have a school teachers, but a school teacher is supported by a 3-tier team of supporters. One tier which is very close, let's say senior teacher, who visits each school once every week. And then we have 2 other tiers who are really planners and the curriculum designer, as well as the teacher's trainer, who work very closely with the teachers. And then this team together is able to generate the learning outcome about which I think we feel very good about. And if that is done on a large scale, I think India can be very proud of. Currently, we have around 25,000 children because of the funding constraint. But that was essentially to show that the system works. So the second part of our program is try to see whether this approach can be applied at a larger scale within the government school system. So we have three such experiments with us so far. First, we worked in almost 40 government schools in Ahmedabad, and the results were very, very impressive. In the sense that children's learning outcomes improved from 25 to almost 60%, which is remarkable for the incremental additional cost our program required. Currently, we have been given permission by the UP government to work in 1,000 government schools, hopefully starting this year, and we'll see how does it work. But we hope that our approach requires additional spending of around, let's say, 250 to 300 rupees per child per year. Now, I am told that the government in many states actually spend as much as 20 to 30,000 rupees per child if you combine all the cost. So the additional cost which our approach requires is fairly small sum of the money that government is spending on this. And if we are able to show that it works within the constraint of the government system, hopefully we would have contributed to the country finding out the effective answer. So this broadly is what we do. But since I guess these days most people are also concerned about distance education because the condition that our earlier speakers found out. I would also like to share a little bit our experience of in that domain.
Pankaj, may I request that you do that in your second round because I'd like to just also get Chitra and Sandeep to get a chance to speak. So may I move to Chitra, who I already introduced. She studied at the Harvard University School of Education and runs Chrysalis in Chennai. And Chitra is one of the people very passionate about reforming the school system and ensuring that the potential of every child comes out. Chitra, tell us about what you do normally and what you do in the time of COVID.
Sure. I think Dr. Shukla and Professor Jain have already talked a lot about various things that they have been trying out, especially in the COVID times. I wanted to take a step back. Like you rightly said, Chrysalis has been in the pursuit of letting the child blossom and awakening the human potential in every child. We have been working a lot in certain pedagogies and even the what of education for now 19 years now. And more recently, we've entrenched a lot into the affordable private school segment. A large part of our work is in the private school segment. And in the last 3-4 years, we have started penetrating a lot and understanding the affordable private school segment. That is a very unique segment, has its own challenges and charisma, and a lot of purposeful work happening there as well. And what we have been doing, I mean, we currently work with over 325,000 students and focus on the formative years. When we say the formative years, it starts with the 2.5-year-old who are just getting into the schooling system out of their homes and toddler age. And it goes up to about 12 years, what we call as the primary. So the kindergarten and the primary is our area of focus. Why I'm highlighting this is in this formative years, learning outcomes are very critical, but so are developmental outcomes. And when we say developmental outcomes, we are talking about the social, emotional, physical, the gross motor, fine motor. And this is where schooling becomes very, very important. We all know that learning happens on the go. All of us keep learning. I'm learning so much. I have learned so much in the last 15 minutes, I must say, listening to both the esteemed panelists. But for this age group, the window of opportunity we have, right, is very, very critical for a lot of stimulation, scaffolding, and providing a very enriching environment. And by enriching, we don't really mean the luxury of the physical space, but how the stakeholders, mainly the teachers and peers, how do we construct and design this environment so that the children are learning and also We believe that the metacognitive space, as we call it, where the child is able to think, self-regulate, blossom into self-directed and independent learners, that occurs in this window of opportunity. So we've been very passionate about this space and focusing a lot on research, unique pedagogy to help teachers transform and impact children. It's very difficult to measure the social, emotional, and other developmental outcomes. Slightly, I must say, simpler to measure cognitive learning outcomes. But we are attempting and endeavoring a lot to see how this happens. Just before I get into the COVID era, I must also say that Chrysalis has also looked at technology and leveraging this in the best manner possible, even within the scope and the mission and vision of what I just spelled out. And why so? Because I totally believe, and I can probably, this could become a controversial statement, but I would rather risk it in this forum. Believe that India has gone a decade behind, and I think Professor Jain spoke about dismal, figures, I must say, in the Indian education system, because our priorities on technology and the effectiveness was slightly misplaced. I'm being kind here by saying slightly. There's been a lot of budgets, especially in private schools and even in the public schooling system, where a lot of technology budgets have been expended without iteration, without measuring outcomes. So we've spent a lot on devices in the classroom. We've spent a lot on audio visuals, and ultimately there has been a lot of study that has shown that this is not really lent itself to enhancement of learning outcomes commensurate to the budget. And I think this has pulled us back. So this was why we started getting into this space and started looking at, yes, leveraging technology when every other field leverages on it and, thriving in many ways. Why not education? And being a pedagogy and an educational research organization, we felt that what we saw in the landscape was a lot of technology companies coming in, and the marriage between the pedagogy and the technology was not happening. So we kind of reversed it and said, okay, we are not technology company, but we are a pedagogy company. How do we bring this? So a lot of experiments, iterations, achievement of outcome measurement to see if there is a correlation or there is a causation was going on. And I think that had put us on a good pedestal in the COVID era. So when the COVID struck, and I think Dr. Shukla beautifully said it put a break into, a lot of our activities. Many of us didn't know what to do. We started looking at remote learning as a very critical piece. Why? Because one of the things that Chrysalis also does is questions everything, every initiative we think, we propose or think about. And when we said, okay, now schools are asking us, what can we do when the schools have closed? How do we continue learning? We went back to the drawing board and we said, do we really need to do this, especially in this age group of, 3 to 12-year-olds? There was one debate on whether we should just let them be at home, enjoy, the setting could be different, but they will nevertheless be learning. But we also realized that this learning window cannot be allowed to rust. And most of the parents, even in the Chrysalis community of parents, the affordable private school first generation learners, so the parents may not be aware or conscious. And in the other end of the spectrum, the so-called educated parent fraternity spectrum, we would see that they may not have the time for it. Most of us are on business calls through the lockdown. So the child is left by herself. And if this learning moments and the window is not purposefully used, then it could just become an inertia and channelized in a negative manner. Once we were convinced that yes, so remote learning is important, we need to find the best ways to do it, we started putting together, I can call it in technology terms an Android app for now, But what we did was also looked at the persona of the stakeholders, because even the teacher, if you're going to tell all the private school teachers, and more so the affordable private school teachers, go at 9:30 and start doing live classes through the day, it is not going to help either the teacher or the child. So what is the attention span of the child? How long can he sit in front of the screen and do what the teacher is asking him to do? How can we hybridize this model? How can we have the right dosage of probably the live sessions, which is important for the child to see the teacher, but support it with some activities that are not actually done on the screen. That was one condition. The second was, I think I'd like to be state here, there could be parents here as well. This remote learning is not actually or should not be directed towards homeschooling, but it is home learning. Let's learn to see the difference in the nuanced difference between home learning and homeschooling. To suddenly overnight say, parents, come on now, start schooling your children, is very unfair, and to me it even questions the need for qualified teachers. Then why are we having a qualification and training for teachers? So this cannot be homeschooling. So how is it home learning, and what are the criteria that are important? Little bit of empowerment, even play-based stimulation at home, do-it-yourself materials. So we took stock and cognizance of all this, and we said, now this is how we need to support our schools, our community of schools. For that, there is the right dosage to take care of this window of learning. The technology is being leveraged here. At the same time, I would put it as high tech and high touch. The human element cannot be taken away. So I think this was very, very critical for us. I think schools are loving it. In fact, I just wanted to add one thing, Vijay, here. When we first launched our home learning plan, our entire 2 week of unit was based on Calm the Corona. It wasn't about, straight away getting into math and science. Calm the Corona had an interdisciplinary approach to it, but the thematic unit was to tell the child, educate the child on why everybody is freaking out here. Your parents, your school is closed. Children will have so many questions in their mind. Not all of them can ask this. So how do you actually address this upfront? Make it glaring for them that yes, there is a disaster, but this disaster has its own uniqueness. And we brought out, considering that the emotional aspect of the child should also be catered to. This was a big hit. All our schools loved it, parents loved it, and we found very interesting responses from students as well. So apart from this, I have a lot to share, a common ground with Dr. Shukla in terms of even our own remote learning platform has considered the teacher's voice as an important aspect, where she can record and send her feedback for a child's work. Because all said and done, children, they all want to articulate and express, and they want to do it with someone who they think is the custodian of their learning. So considering all this, I think we have come out with a plan, and personally it's been very gratifying and fulfilling for me and my team. We have a long way to go. I would just like to end this first round of mine with whatever we are doing, we are also ensuring this is not only for this quarantine period, right? I mean, this is a transitionary period. We don't know how long this is going to be. I think it's anybody's guess. We are hoping August, there will be some semblance of normalcy and a socially distanced school reopening. But even after this, we don't know what's going to, there could be resurgence, there could be, whatever. So how do we come out with a model that can reimagine the new normal or the new abnormal? I don't know what to call it, right? I mean, it could be a new normal or new abnormal. How are we going to reimagine the schooling system? There are some things, and I could be an old school thought person where I feel that it is important socializing and emotionally, schools are the custodians of learning. Let's not fool ourselves saying, oh, this is shown that children can learn from home, so why do I have to pay the fee? Or why do I have to send my child to the school? I think that it is the role of the teacher, the role of the school will have to change a bit, and they will still exist. And how do we create a nice, lovely hybrid model? And that may be very innovative in nature. So currently my team and me are brainstorming, of course, only on Zoom and Google Meet and Microsoft Teams, on how we can reimagine this new phase. And so I think that's very, very interesting for us, Vijay. So I wanted to just share that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Chitra. It's really amazing that from the quantitative sweep that we had Alok talking in terms of lakhs of children and lakhs of school and thousands of teachers. And then we had the intermediate situation with Pankaj, and you have zoomed down to literally the individual child and how he or she learns, and that how schooling is not only about the subject matter but about the developmental aspects, the social, emotional, the physical. And I think that feeds directly into Sandeep, that's philosophy. So let's quickly go to Sandeep. Sandeep, are you online?
Yeah, thank you, Vijay. I'm very much here. Yes, I may have worked with teachers, but I've never had a panel like this and have to express myself with such a large audience. May have done it without electronics, but more physically. But this is my first time. Do excuse me. So I'm giving you a warning here. Yeah, I'm glad that we came in now, because from a macro perspective to a very, very micro perspective, we are here now. Now, when I talk of numbers, we are only talking of hundreds. We're not talking of thousands. We're not talking of children. We're not talking of parents. We're only talking about teachers. So if I look back at my life of my 30 plus years of experience, first 20 went in advocacy, in representing an international organization, where one got the luxury of traveling from Australia to UK to just about anywhere and sit with the prince and the policy makers in advocacy and design towards programs, towards establishing what the Duke of Edinburgh's Award worldwide. I have almost 27 years of work with them. Perhaps this was good. But then I said that change has to start from the bottom of the pyramid. And I'm glad we're all here together, all talking one voice, affordable, quality education. So that brings us together to where we are today. Learning Forward Foundation is an outcome of about a decade's work, which started when I moved from advocacy to a ground level, zero ground rural school in Rajasthan, courtesy Fab India, where they had a trust, and they were trying to create a model school which would focus on the personal and social development of every individual. I'm saying every individual because whether it is a teacher, the community, the management, as well as the children, they all have to be together. So that's where we started giving shape to what we call the My Good School philosophy. So we have a small visual. First, we will tell you what our philosophy is about, and then we'll tell you how we are going about it. We feel that the only way you can give personal and social development for everyone is where, what does a school do really? A school is a space where a child goes first from the personal, close family space to a social space. So a child has to share. So first thing when a child does to share is child learns how to give, and that is service. Second, at the school level, child picks up skills. So when a child learns how to give, child also sees and actually accepts what is around first. Second, learns a lot. So child acquires skills. Yes, the child has the physical body to build. So child plays sport. And the child also studies. So with this as a philosophy which was inherently inbuilt into the spirit
reduce
of
the
Fab
size
India
of the
School.
image?
Now, when you look at the My Good School philosophy, My Good School philosophy says that the personal and social development of a child happens with the teacher at the epicenter. So how does this happen? It happens because the teacher's relationship first with the student has to be strengthened, second with the community, with the management, and fourth with the teacher. So when a teacher does this, the teacher creates an environment where we can deliver service, skill, sport, and study in the school. Now we really prepared the teacher to do this, and that's where came in the Learning Forward India Foundation. We thought that the only way, and all of us agree, from Alok sir to Jain Saab to Chitra, that teacher really is the change maker. So we said, okay, how do we take learning forward? As simple as that. So when we thought how we'll take learning forward, we looked all over the world as to what is the only way to take learning forward. And that's where we figured out the only way to take learning forward is to have happy teachers. So we started building a happy teachers program. So we started with the philosophy of My Good School, went away to build a happy teachers program, met up with Learning Forward. Learning Forward today is an organization of over 11,000 educators. I call them professional educators all over the world. We only have 400 members in India. And beyond that, in India, we've only so far worked with 25 to 30 schools with our program and development. So last 7-8 years went in creating path-breaking programs like Happy Teachers. Now, Happy Teachers consists of one, what we call diversity, inclusion, and belonging. That's one program. Second program, Joy of Learning. Now, what is the future of a school? What does My Good School have to create? If you ask us, My Good School should look at building an environment where we can have a child who can experience appreciation, caring, cooperation, courage, freedom, friendship, happiness, honesty, hope, humility, love, patience, peace, quality, respect, responsibility, simplicity, thoughtfulness, tolerance, trust, understanding, unity. That's our syllabus. So when we talk of joy of learning, we work with the teachers, and we have worked now with over 500 teachers. Ours is a very micro model, which is now ready to be rolled into a larger space. And I'm glad the COVID times came, because COVID times gave me my teachers in full heart and soul. I could never get this so much time with the teachers in a normal working schedule, which I got in the COVID days. Thank you, COVID, for that. It built our optimism. It made the happy teachers experience the joy of learning by actually exploring these 22 values as virtually a syllabi, if you want to call it. Now, if you go across the country, there are roughly 37 different boards and affiliations across the country. There are about 40 odd languages and dialects which we have in our study system. Now, what is common amongst them? Common amongst them is just these 22 values which actually help create a good school system. And how does a good school system get created? When the school offers service, skill, sport, and study. So beyond looking color, look at the 4 beautiful children in front of you. There is one child, the magenta one, who does service. There is the cyan child who does skill. There is a green child who does sport. And there is the child, which is the royal blue, who does study. So what the My Good School does, and we prepare the teacher to do that, is to create an environment where children, they can excel at any one of the 4, and they will be able to get what we call identity, spiritual aesthetics, they will get decision-making ability, their health will improve, there will be intellectual growth, they will get social skills like communication, relationship building, yes, employment skills, become better citizens and grow up in a great environment. Time is short. In 5-7 minutes, I've tried to explain our approach, which is 2-pronged. Create the My Good School system with the help of happy teachers and bring about what we call school culture transformation. Now, when you have to look at school culture transformation, you have to look at 3 things. You have to look at governance, you have to look at training, and you have to look at learning. So when you look at governance, training, and learning, you actually transform a school. And that's where we have been involved in the last particularly 5 years, where we have worked with the big 4 accounting firms or the consulting firms in the country as service providers to individual small schools. Our model is very simple. We have to create open source material, but The how of implementing the open source material has to be given by a coach, and that coach gets a small fees when the coach helps us create what we call the My Good School ecosystem. So that's in short what we have, and how we
Sandeep,
show it to you or how we share it to you is on a platform called schooleducation.com. Thank you, Vijay.
Sandeep, thank you so much. I think the detail of how Gyanshala, how Chrysalis, and how My Good School and Learning Forward Foundation works is, I'm sure, of great interest to a lot of members in the audience, and I hope they will reach out to all of you individually. But let me come back to now the second round, although we're running a bit short on time. But Alok, you of course opened with a bang, and give us all a sense of reality of the enormity of the issue. And Chhattisgarh is typically about 2% of India for almost every parameter. So even with 50 lakh children, it is about 2% of the 26 crore that are there. And yet, as we learned from the conversations with Pankaj, with Chitra, and with Sandeep, a lot of the devil is in the detail, So in spite of fantastic work that you've done in Chhattisgarh to, very quickly bring people children up to digital access, the fact is that 20 lakh out of 50 lakh children have made it. One of the participants has asked that question. What about the remaining 30 lakh? And then you yourself have mentioned that the outreach in rural areas is more difficult using the internet and so forth. You did mention a number of, other alternatives. But what about the issue of, ensuring that the school system, even before the COVID, there was the whole issue of, outcomes. I mean, as Pankaj began by telling us that India's outcomes are not very good. The ASER report every year puts out a very depressing survey. Only about a quarter of fifth standard children can read second standard text and do divisions sum. So how do we handle those additional problems in addition to the problems of outreach, which you have significantly, made beginning with already in Chhattisgarh? So, I'm simultaneously appreciative, but I also want you to deal with what your normal pre-COVID problems were, which you've done a lot about.
Yeah, so thanks again. And you've raised a very important and pertinent issue. However, I think that, the COVID has given us an opportunity to have a complete rethink on what we are doing in education. So therefore, while these are all reports available, and I have some very good friends in ASER and some very good friends in several other NGOs who are doing excellent work, we sometimes lose track of the thing which is happening in spite of everything that we are doing in mainstream education. Now, not so long back, when I was in Delhi and my son had just completed his class 12th and wanted to get admission in DU colleges, we found that the cutoff is 100%. Now, I think it's quite stupid. What is this 100% cutoff? The whole system of education in India is built around trying to filter out people. Instead of encouraging, we want to filter them out and say, you can't study, you can't read, you can't come to college. I think now, call it God, call it nature, call it COVID, we have an opportunity of looking at things where children anyway will not go to educational institutions. And I long back I read a book where the author said that my mother wanted me to be educated, therefore she did not send me to a school. Are schools the best places for children to study? That's a big question that we need to, because now is the second round, and therefore I thought I should raise some philosophical questions for all of us to really think about and answer. If in spite of everything, ASER still says that only hardly 20% children attain competencies, then what are we doing? If our education system says that 90% or 99% of our students don't deserve to get admission in colleges, then what are we doing? We need to think of creative means of educating our students. It may be in their homes, in their communities, in their social environments, and build these systems around these things. How this will exactly happen, I'm not very sure at this point of time, because this has been suddenly thrust upon us. But we are surely and slowly working towards these things. One simple thing I would like to share with you is this whole business of assessment, where I'm told that there are more than 320 competencies which are assessed by various educational experts who are in, experts in pedagogy, etc., at elementary level. So you are saying doing multiplications and additions, but there are more than 300 competencies which are being assessed. And I found that when this assessment is done properly, then the teacher is not actually teaching anything, they are only assessing. So we are trying to develop a system of subjective assessment by teachers, which can also be done by parents, which is a smiley based system. You would have seen in restaurants, for example, when you go to the restaurant to eat something, they will give you a smiley based system where a smiling smiley means 10 out of 10, and a weeping or crying smiley actually means 0 out of 10, something of that kind. So we can take some specific competencies and we can try and, the teacher or the parent or somebody can try and assess some of these things in this subjective manner. Second thing is, what is the material that we are giving to the child? After all, I think the education system is meant to facilitate and handhold and not limit what the child is doing. So can we give more books, more teaching learning material? I'm told Gujarat has done some, our friend from Ahmedabad will probably be able to tell us, they have done some experiment where workbooks are being distributed to children, and you can distribute things like crayons, colors. Children can try and express themselves in various means, methods. You can draw, you can sketch, you can paint, you can sing, you can write. So various things, including creativity, things like original thought, things like emotional well-being, all of these need to be addressed properly. And I think COVID has actually given us the time and the opportunity to start thinking about these things and come up with maybe out-of-the-box solutions. I don't have any solution, some kind of a takeaway immediately which somebody can go and start implementing. But I think all of us will have to walk this path individually and learn for ourselves on how we can do these things. That's all that I can say at this stage.
Thank you so much. There's one question, Alok, before I ask Pankaj to speak. There's one question which I think you're best suited to answer. One of the participants has asked that within this overall framework, there were always the disadvantaged groups, the Dalits, the scheduled tribes, the minorities, and the children with learning disabilities. How with everything else that school system is coping with, how is attention to be paid to that, and how do we ensure that they don't get further left behind?
So you're right. The question of equity is always there, and we are trying to solve it the best that we can. I gave you the example of content which can be played on feature phones. I gave you the example of certain interventions which can be done offline and don't require internet, etc. However, one has to admit that some of these are not the best solutions. But let me point out that whether COVID or not, even pre-COVID, you will find that some of the physical schools located physically in these areas, don't even have enough number of teachers. Forget about subject teachers. So inequity has been there always, and all of a sudden it's not going to go away. The thing is that we need to really concentrate and try to reduce inequity as much as possible. But I think any one of us who claims that we have been able to completely eliminate inequity would not be telling the truth. We are trying to do our best, and we'll keep trying to do as much as we can.
Well, thank you so much. I think apart from managing a very large system, you also show that there are permanent issues, and that we have to continue to grapple with them, and we are grappling with them. This panel itself is a wonderful example of how very large systems can learn from very small initiatives, and how the work of what has been tried at pilot scale can be fed into large systems. And Pankaj, you were beginning to tell us about some of the work that you were doing to take it to the UP state and others. But also, you were also going to tell us some of the digital interventions that you're doing. So please go ahead.
Well, actually, the conclusion of our digital engagement has already been stated by Chitra, that the evidence about its effectiveness remains to be really established. And there is a possibility that in spite of a lot of efforts and resources applied to that, the outcomes may still remain very, very limited. So I think it is best for us to recognize that the evidence about the effectiveness of such intervention is extremely thin, and the kind of a seriousness and critical appreciation and effort which is required or which is indicated by Chitra is at the bottom of this state. Because we were fortunate to launch this program long back with the support of like Media Lab at MIT, and it was, I would say, very fortunate circumstances many years back. But bottom line was that the results are not commensurate with the expectation, and certainly not with the resource which needs to deploy to make it work effectively. So I think Chitra has really captured the essence of that part. Regarding the UP, see, as we highlighted that we believe that the teachers, while we of course have to put in all the efforts to improve their capability on the ground, but the bottom line would remain that if we can help them to perform with the existing capabilities, that probably would like to lead us to a path where we would have larger and better learning outcomes. So our idea is essentially to give the teachers and the classroom actually a structured curriculum and structured opportunity whereby child is given material and curriculum where she can learn significantly by herself and also through a peer interaction, certainly supported by the teachers. And the teachers are then provided a structured curriculum which they are able to deliver in the classroom with their existing capability and the time which they can do. Yeah, I have a great sympathy for the teachers, because if you really look back at our own experience, all of us get tired dealing with one child in our home. At the end of the day, mother, father, all are tired. For a teacher to deal with 20, 30, 40 children for a day is a tough task. So we must recognize we have to somehow simplify the task for the teacher and give them such aids which works with them, given their capacity of attention as well as the capable cognitive and emotional capabilities that they have. So we are trying it out in around 1,000 schools, and we hope that we can simplify their role in such a manner that it still leads to better learning outcome for this around 40,000 or 50,000 children that we are going to work with.
Thank you so much. I'm sure Sandeep, when he talks, he will also talk about some of the lessons about working with teachers. He has this whole theory about happy teachers make good schools. So perhaps we will have some dialogue on that. But let me go back to Chitra. And Chitra, there's already one question that you said you will answer in person. But I think people are also very taken by your emphasis on, as I can make out from participant comments and questions, your emphasis on the holistic, sort of education that the school offers, and the point you made about the fact that there's no such, you can't really just because children are still learning something at home, home learning is not equal to homeschooling. And in any case, homeschooling is a doubtful prospect given either upper end parents or lower end parents. So would you like to, give us some additional points after having heard the other teachers, the panelists, and also some of the questions?
Yeah, I tend to agree with Dr. Shukla that, equity is always the question that comes, right? Whenever he's talking about a large system. I'm talking about over 1,000 schools that we work with. The same question comes up, any innovative initiative or a pioneering initiative tends to raise this question of equity. And it can be because of infrastructure, lack of, all that we spoke about, or it could be simply the diversity of the families that we cater to and the students themselves being so diverse. So given that, I think it is very critical not to lose the action point. I mean, we cannot say, let me crack this whole thing and wait till I feel that there is an equity and then come in. So there needs to be these pilots, as you rightly said. And I think the key is to ensure that, the pros and cons are thought about. And that's what we are doing here, considering the persona, like I said, how do we kind of bring in this initiative as closely to the people involved. And when I say people involved, I speak about the child. The child is the center of all our initiatives. But also consider the change agent. I would like to add that happy teachers just don't make happy schools, but they make a happy society. If you have teachers who are happy in a society, I think you tend to make the whole society so happy. So how do you consider the context of the teachers, the background? So all that, I think, tends to get into whatever we attempt to do. And I can't reinforce enough that the holistic development of the child should be the focus. And from there comes the outcomes. And one more thing that, we are grappling with, not just us, but, as a society and as an educator community, is the range of development, or I would say the period of development, varies significantly from student to student. And when we put them in one class or a cohort or whatever, there is always a lag. I think I'd also like to re-emphasize what Dr. Shukla said. We cannot have, assessment is very important, but in its true nature, it should be continuous and formative and not merely tests. And if it is just tests, then it becomes teaching for testing, whereas it should actually be testing to teach better. So our work has also been a lot on assessments, and we truly believe that assessment needs to be looked at in a very different manner. Assessment is a very, very important piece in learning. We cannot take that truth away, but the very concept of assessment is so differently interpreted by people. They just look at it as a test. Even in remote learning, we cannot just say do quizzes to understand if the child has achieved the outcome. There needs to be a lot more nuances when it comes to assessment. I mean, those are the additional points I thought I must make here.
Chitra, there are some people who have very specific questions about Chrysalis's pedagogical approach. I think you could just offline answer them. I think if you go through the Q&A, there are one or two people who asked those questions.
Yeah, sure.
Sandeep, would you like to come in again? And
yeah, thanks, Vijay. I'm so glad. Again, I mentioned that I'm number 4, which is a great advantage. So if I look at what Alok said, or what Jain Sab said, or what Chitra said, we all said the same thing. Teachers. That's all we need. And yes, we are talking of curriculum, we are talking of assessment, but are we actually talking of the well-being of teachers? Some of us did reflect on that. And that perhaps is the biggest change maker in the whole equation. When you talk of home learning, you're actually referring to the personal and social development of an individual. And That can only happen when your teachers have had an experience of what we call what is happiness. We have taken 7 years on a pilot, like you beautifully said. It's after 7 years we've been able to figure out that you don't need a curriculum, you need no assessments. What you need is self-reflection. Yes, that's a method of measuring better learning outcomes. So your model has to be, you look at internet today everywhere, you'll have 5 stars. And I'm glad Alok mentioned about smileys and how we actually look at assessment. So we have to move at measuring assessments. We have to move at a reflection and not numbers. So that's the first change. And second, for this change, we have to prepare the teachers. And when I talk of teachers, we have to have them experience compassion, trust, and all the 22 values are listed out. When the teachers experience those, they will look for those values in the classroom. They will look for those values in their cohorts, in their groups. And when they find those values, then they can sustain and build a learning environment. That's our whole approach. I have one question which was addressed to me. I'll answer it right away. Prakash says that thanks for the talk. How do you accomplish teaching? Great quality is mentioned as Happy Teachers program. It's fairly simple, and that's why I said that we like keeping it simple. Yes, we do use technology to communicate, but we work with heart and soul. And our focus is on social and emotional being. How we do it? We meet our teachers over a period of time. First, at their comfort. Second, the teachers decide what they want to do in terms of project-based learning. And third, they do it at their own pace with their own content in their own groups. So there's so much flexibility. I'm not sure whether we can scale it up to a national level, but with our pilot in place, we should be able to seed some interesting experiments in all our systems, whether it is with Mr. Jain or with Mr. Alok, or even share them with Chitra. So we are all looking at one thing: how do we get to the happiness of the teachers? By reducing administrative overload, by perhaps giving teacher tools to transform themselves, and perhaps offering a system where the teacher and the society can actually connect and work together for better learning outcomes. And then only we'll have the right environment for a better education system. Thank you, Vijay.
Great. Thank you so much, Sandeep. And so we have the last few minutes left, about 8 or 9 minutes to go. And, while I've already directed some of the questions to various people specifically, but one generic question that needs to be answered, and maybe we can request Alok to take a cut on that. So there's an anonymous attendee who's asked this question to all the panelists. Does online education put a lot of pressure on students? And unless it is designed and implemented very, very sensitively, will not online education, in fact, increase the burden both for teachers and students? So I'll request all of you to sort of respond to that, but Alok, starting with you, because you have had to deal with it right away as the answer.
So the answer is that all education can put pressure, and all education can be such that there is no pressure on the child. I think it's the relationship between the educator and the student which really matters. Of course, there are things like how much screen time should be there, and continuously watching a screen will have some kind of a stress. All those things are there. But then continuously attending classes and the teacher datifying the student, all those things will also put pressure. It has been said that sometimes if you are put in a class where everybody is a brilliant student and you are not so good in studies, that puts pressure. I am told that under RTE, when children from poor families actually get admission in very expensive schools because of RTE, they are under a tremendous amount of pressure because everybody around them belongs to very rich families and these students are from poor families. So pressure is something which is very relative, and of course we need to be very careful and conscious of the fact that all education can be very stressful, and the educators need to really take care of that. Thank you.
Pankaj, would you like to, on this issue of online learning putting pressure?
I tend, to me, the real issue is not really of pressure. I think in the online mode, it's very easy for the child to really withdraw, frankly. because there is nobody to really enforce his or her sort of attention to the what is being offered, frankly. So I really don't see that the issue is really of pressure being put, because after all, who has to monitor whether he or she is really trying to learn from it, basically. But coming to the issue of stress, I think stress is not so bad in life. Ultimately, stress does lead to sort of, in a way, it facilitates learning, depending upon how it is handled. So I would tend to believe that in online mode, first of all, child can withdraw very easily. She is uncomfortable with the level of stress which is being posed. And in many cases, stress is not really a bad thing to happen for the learning to happen.
Vijay, just a point there. I mean, I think any education can be stress or ideal stress or no stress. I don't think we can just bracket it. And I just responded to one of the questions that came in. Any new initiative or a new kind of learning, and that's what we've done in a matter of, overnight, I would say, calls for over communication in my mind, right? I mean, it's not just about somebody raised a question. We've been sending a lot of interactive lessons, videos, but 50% of the students only have been able to, do it. So I think the key is to provide a parallel and a simultaneous supportive environment to the whole thing, right? Make outside of learning, I mean, formal learning. It helps if a teacher just calls students once in 2 weeks and asks, have a nice communication. Similarly, it'll be good if the school principal or the leader has a casual conversation with the teacher. I think we are all so stressed that we are so operational in nature. Even in our own organization, it's a huge change for people who used to rebel in face-to-face meetings, come together in a office environment. Suddenly, we are all seemingly working 12 hours a day, 11 hours a day, 14 hours a day. What we started doing is, we said one day everybody will just have an antakshari, let's all come on Zoom. Why only talk business? Let's have an unwinding session. So I think the stress is there in anything. It's about how you bring that communication and a safety net and have a parallel free communication, freewheeling discussion, etc. So I don't think, and one last thing, we tend to classify this whole remote learning piece, and I'm just defining it as remote learning because it's not happening in a school building. We are classifying this remote learning as online learning. There are many sub verticals and initiatives in this. So I think we have to first of all arrest those misinterpretations and say it's not as if, I think recently there was a public interest litigation where somebody has now said ban online classes. There are even some states that are doing it. I think one needs to qualify it. One needs to say, what are we trying to ban? Why? Rather than just having this, broad perception and voice on online classes. I think it calls for a glossary of terms that brings in some kind of unanimity in all of us. I hope it happens too soon. Otherwise, we may move from one spectrum to the other and say now, everybody started online classes and there's going to be some blanket rules and everybody says just chill. So I think it's not good for the education system at large.
Sandeep, any closing comments and then?
Yeah, absolutely. I have answered the questions in the chat myself.
Okay.
This session, if you may allow me, I'll summarize with 3 words.
Okay.
1, relationship. Education is just relationship. How you build your relationship with the community and the stakeholders, that governs the quality of the education which you can give. So if you look at what Alok said or what Jain Sahab said, what Chitra says, relationship is almost synonymous to better education. Second, reflection. Now, when we look at assessments, they are perhaps not the best method. We need to look at reflection. And reflections will only help us with better learning outcomes, which will be creating your good school. So the 3 R's are relationship, reflection, and realization. So if you have great relationships, you have good reflection, there will be a better realization. That's a very simple model, a very simplistic approach, because our work is more on a macro and general life skills model than curriculum and infrastructure. In our work, when we look at teachers, we are only looking at one thing. Look at teachers, number one, agnostic of infrastructure. Look at teachers, agnostic of curriculum. And finally, look at teachers with empathy, with trust, and give them the leadership. Then only will you have better reflection and better education.
Great. I'm sure the teachers in the among the participants, they're feeling very glad about this